the healing I'm talking about. So as I've shared with you all many times before, I love being an American living in Canada for a lot of different reasons. But one of the best reasons is I get to celebrate Thanksgiving twice every year. In October with my Canadian peeps, and then in November I go home or home to California and celebrate with my family in the U.S. And because I live and really try to practice living in an attitude of gratitude all the time, and gratitude is one of my favorite spiritual practices, it suits me just fine to have 2 Thanksgivings every year. This would have been my 3rd double Thanksgiving, and I was really looking forward to it if things had gone according to plan. Because the plan was to go down to Palm Springs and spend American Thanksgiving with my sisters. It's our tradition. We get a timeshare, and we do all the fun things. We shop, and we go to Joshua Tree National Park and hike around, and we loll by the pool, and we soak in the hot tub, and we eat Mexican food. Thank you, God. I'm sorry, I love y'all, but the Mexican food here does suck. It's so we have a good time, right? I've got this whole time plan. It's the perfect week to just relax and get ready for the holidays, right? Except unfortunately, I ended up in the emergency room on Thanksgiving Day before the feast with acute appendicitis. I don't mean it was cute. I mean it was cute. It was like not healthy, right? And Thanksgiving evening, I'm being wheeled into the operating room to have said appendix removed. And what I can tell you is that it was the scariest, most humbling, and most belief-testing time of my life. It was scary for obvious reasons. I was in a lot of pain, and I was about to be operated on by perfect strangers. 1,500 miles, that's 2,400 kilometers. It was humbling because being in a position of relying on others to take care of you like that is very challenging for someone like me, and yet what choice did I have, really? It was the essence of both surrendering and receiving, which if you remember, if you were here in the past couple of months, we've been talking a lot about, right? And it was belief testing because it was a true rubber meets the road moment. It was a true test of whether or not I believe what I teach. Excuse me, the emotions come pretty easily these days. Did I really have the faith that I live in a friendly universe that is for me as I was about to go under the knife? Was I willing, was I able to let go of control and just allow the process to unfold as it would? Did I trust my own positive thinking that I live my life by when it is apparent that things are not all rainbows and unicorns? Well, the first indication that my belief was intact was when I was being rolled into the operating room and I realized that I was already doing spiritual mind treatment, which is our form of affirmative prayer. And as they're putting the oxygen mask on my face, I was in prayer. And the many, many times in the following days in the hospital through complications and through scares and drugs and discomfort, I found myself automatically going into treatment or meditation or both. Now that's not to say that I didn't have a few moments, many of them in fact, when I was in a total W2ETF attitude. And yes, I know what it means. And yes, I mean it. I felt very sorry for myself many of the times. I was afraid. It was hard for me to ask for help from people. I said many bad words, trust me, under my breath. And yet the truth is that like insurance, I don't care what you think about insurance, there is a purpose for it. And like insurance, I had paid into my spiritual bank account for many, many years of spiritual practice so that my faith was there when I needed it. I found these wonderful 2 quotes from Ernest Holmes. First one is, spiritual faith is unshakable conviction, a surrender of the mind, the will, and the imagination to the belief in an invisible agency which can and will respond to us. An invisible agency, which means God, Spirit, the universe, whatever, that can and will and does respond to us. And then he went on to say, not only must we have complete faith in Spirit and its ability to know and to do, but we must have complete confidence in our approach to it. We must not be lukewarm in our conviction. We must know that we know. So that's one of the purposes of the spiritual practice that we do in centers like this. When we take our classes and we do our treatment work and we meditate and we meet with practitioners and all these other things, we do that so that when we might be faced with something less than ideal, we automatically go to what it is that we know. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to remember to do it. It's ingrained in our DNA. It's ingrained in our consciousness. So this was again tested the day after my emergency surgery, because I was still not feeling very well. I had heard that once the inflamed appendix is removed, the localized discomfort where it's supposed to be gone, right? But it wasn't happening for me. I was expecting post-operation discomfort, but this was still in that same area, right? And the pain and the symptoms, and I was just not feeling good. And so I told the doctor that, and he said, oh, I was afraid of that. He said, we weren't able to get your entire appendix out. You went into some breathing distress during the surgery, and we had to stop the procedure before we were finished. We're going to have to go back in today or tomorrow to get the rest of it. Well, let me tell you, that was not what I wanted to hear. I had fully expected to leave the hospital that day and return to my Thanksgiving vacation. There was Mexican food to be eaten. There was shopping to be done. So once again, I am clearly at choice. I could go down the rabbit hole of self-pity and whining and playing the victim, and actually, I did. But I also knew I had another choice. And that other choice was to know that whatever the experience was, it was there for me, and that I could choose to find the blessing in it. So I chose to practice thanks living, finding the thing in the experience that I was grateful for, even if I wasn't grateful for the experience itself. For instance, thank you, God, I was there with my family and not by myself. You know, they took me to the ER and they waited with me, and they were there when I came out of surgery both times. And they picked me up from the hospital and they carted me around. They went and got me Mexican food, and they hung out with me at the timeshare. And we couldn't do anything, right? I'm just like, totally vegged out. We couldn't do anything. They gave up their Thanksgiving vacation for me. But here's another little gratitude. We get to do it all again next week when I fly, thank you God, to St. George, Utah for Christmas. And we're going to have the vacation that we didn't have. That's next week. So let me tell you some of my other gratitudes. And I'm free-forming a little bit here. I hope you all are okay with this. The hospital staff was so friendly. They were really helpful. From the receptionist who checked me in cheerfully, even though she had to work on Thanksgiving, to the physician's assistant who went to battle for me with the insurance company who wanted me to fly home to have the procedure here in Alberta. to the nice ER nurse who gave me my first shot of morphine. And let me keep my warm, fleecy, lounging pants on because it was cold in there. To the embarrassed young man who was forced to ask me, before he could take me to the CT scan, he had to ask me if I was pregnant. No, dear. But bless you. It was like being promoted. To the patient transport guy who ends up being an opera singer. Yeah. To the OR nurse, very smiley. She just fussed all over me before and after both surgeries. The team of nurses who took care of me for 3 days. Do we have any nurses in the house? Any nurses here? Thank you, thank you. You really are angels. And I don't know that I ever believed in real angels before until this. So, and you know, they worked long and hard hours and they were so wonderful. Another gratitude goes to the surgeon and the anesthesiologist. You know, and they're doctors. And they have the tude. But you know what? They tried to understand. They knew I was in pain, right? They did their best to reassure me that everything was going to be okay. Now I'm in Palm Springs area, right? If you've ever been to Palm Springs, it's a very, very wealthy, very prosperous area. And so there's tons of very upscale hospitals there. And the one I was in was not one of them. It was a small regional hospital in Indio, California, which is where all the workers live who service all of the snazzy places in the Palm Springs area. And for some reason, I was very grateful that I was at that hospital instead of one of the big snazzy ones, because I got really wonderful personalized care there. To them, I was more than just a sick person. I was a real person that they seemed to care about. It reminded me of the quote from Blanche Dubois, Streetcar Named Desire, "I've always depended on the kindness of strangers." Which reminds me to another gratitude that I feel needs to be expressed here. In our teaching, we're all about self-responsibility, that we create our experience with our thoughts. That is the basis of our teaching, and I'm still working on that one with this experience. Just, you know, when I get it, I'll come share it with you all, other than the gratitude thing. We also teach that it's very important that we stand guard over the portals of our minds, as Emerson wrote. So I have lived my life for many, many years. I'm 25 years in this teaching. And I've lived my life with the attitude, with the adage of, if it is to be, it is up to me. It's been a motto of mine. So I pride myself on being a strong and independent and reliable and capable self-starting person. I'm the person that people come to for help, not the other way around. And yet, if you remember, for the past several months, we've been talking about being a little bit more vulnerable, being a little more allowing, being a bit more open to receive. You all remember that, right? I did a talk not too long ago about being a gracious receiver. Because by being a gracious receiver, it completes the cycle of giving and receiving. And I got to tell you, it's a really, really hard thing for me to do, because I never want to appear needy or helpless or not capable. But this must be a very important lesson for me to learn in my spiritual evolution, because I was forced by circumstances to truly rely on the kindness of strangers. For instance, when I was in the hospital those days, I was attached to all kinds of wires and tubes. I had to have someone help me into the bathroom, for God's sake. I had to ask the flight attendant to put my computer bag up into the bin. I had to have somebody take me in a wheelchair, for God's sake, through the really long walk from in the Calgary airport to customs and the luggage pickup. I had to ask my friend who picked me up to carry my luggage upstairs to the bedroom and put it on the bed and open it up for me. I had to reach out to several of you and ask for rides, and people brought me meals and carried things for me and shopped for me. And the strong, independent me is practically wincing from embarrassment and shame. Who am I to ask for someone's help? Who am I not to pull my own weight? Who am I to expect others to do something for me? It was so humbling. And yet, how grateful am I that there are people who were willing to do that for me? How grateful am I that I had the opportunity to get this important lesson in generous giving and receiving in such a loving and supportive manner. Now, would I have preferred to get the lesson with a little feather touch? Yes. But this certainly got my attention. How thankful I am that I can be vulnerable enough to be able to stand in front of you and talk about this. And know that you love and accept me, even when I'm not being the strong and independent, capable, reliable person that I pride myself in being. Most especially, how grateful I am that I belong to a faith tradition that recognizes gratitude as a spiritual practice, not something to just give lip service to a few times a year. One of my favorite all-time quotes comes from Meister Eckhart. If the only prayer you said was thank you, that would be enough. And that, ladies and gentlemen,